Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the launch of 23 Starlink satellites. You are looking live at a Falcon 9 rocket standing on Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX is counting down to the launch of the Starlink 12-23 mission. Right now, liftoff is scheduled for 10:09 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 0209 UTC for our viewers around the world. I'm Stephen Young, and I'll be providing commentary tonight. Will Robinson-Smith has the night off. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm joined tonight by Adam Bernstein running the cameras here at the Kennedy Space Center press site. We'll also have support with downrange tracking from our friends Pete Carstens at MaxQ Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs of C&J Images. Here's a view from Chuck's camera on Merritt Island showing the launch pad across the Indian River Lagoon. A big thank you to all our moderators also joining us in the chat tonight. I see Jeff Hansen, Aussie Space Girl, Rick Donner, and apologies to anyone I've missed. In addition to providing commentary tonight, I'm also running the technical aspects of tonight's coverage. So please be patient with me as I attempt to provide commentary and push the buttons and pull the levers to make this broadcast happen. Spaceflight Now is powered by our viewers and members. Please hit the like button, click subscribe, and the notifications bell. And that way you'll always know when new videos are posted and you won't miss any of our live streams. Also, please share this stream. It helps more people find our coverage and everything else going on with the channel. If you'd like to do more to help improve and expand our coverage of the space program, we'd very much appreciate it if you would consider making a donation through YouTube's Super Chat feature or by becoming a member of our YouTube channel. Membership grants you access to our special members-only videos, as well as discounts in our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. A huge thank you to everyone who's made a contribution to help fund our coverage. We can't do this without your support. We're now less than 56 minutes away from the planned T0 for this Falcon 9 rocket. Inside the nose cone, the payload fairing, there are 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites. 13 of those are designed for direct-to-cell phone transmissions. We're at T-minus 55 minutes and counting. We're about 15 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director will give their go for the start of propellant load for today's launch. SpaceX is running the countdown from its launch control center. That's housed inside the Hangar X facility, which is located about 5.5 miles to the west of the launch pad. That facility is also used to refurbish Falcon 9 boosters, and in a separate building, the Starlink satellites are readied and encapsulated within the payload fairing for their flight aboard the Falcon 9. Today's launch will also be supported by teams at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. This was to have been the second Starlink launch of the day for SpaceX. They had planned a liftoff from Vandenberg Space Force Base on the West Coast. However, that launch was scrubbed. There were a number of delays. The T0 went to the end of the launch window for that particular mission, and then SpaceX pushed the launch back till Monday. So that launch, which is carrying 27 Starlink satellites, is now targeted for 1:39 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4:39 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have full coverage of that tomorrow on a very busy day. That launch will be followed up by the flight of an Atlas V rocket carrying the first operational satellites for Amazon's Kuiper internet service. And then another launch is planned from Florida by SpaceX from Launch Complex 39A, also carrying Starlink satellites. This mission will be launching in the evening sometime, but as you can see, the Strongback is currently still at the launch pad. Still time for them to get that into the hangar and load the Falcon 9 onto that structure so it can be rolled out to the pad. It's really a picture-perfect night for a Falcon 9 launch from Florida's Space Coast. As you can see from this GOES weather satellite image, there are very few clouds in the area. Just that one little spot north of Orlando, but clear skies. It's a sky filled with stars here at the Kennedy Space Center press site. If we take a look at the radar, it looks like there's a lot going on, but that's actually just noise on the radar. On Saturday, the 45th Weather Squadron, based here at Cape Canaveral, forecast a 90% chance of favorable weather during the launch window tonight. Their concerns with the possibility for cumulus cloud and anvils. That looks like it has not materialized. They did also consider there was a chance of scattered showers and thunderstorms, but it really does look from the untrained eye that it's a great night to go fly a rocket. If for whatever reason SpaceX doesn't get the Falcon 9 off the ground tonight, tomorrow there is still an 80% chance of favorable conditions with the same potential risks to liftoff. Just dipping into the chat quickly, big thank you to Jeff Hansen, one of our moderators, for a $10 super chat, who says, welcome to the 20 plus club. B1077. He's referring to the first stage Falcon 9 booster that will be used for this mission. Has the tail number 1077. Thank you so much, Jeff, for your support. And also thank you to Damian Williams for a $5 super chat. He's asking if the V3 Starlink satellites have a higher orbit and will be able to maintain their orbit longer than the previous Starlink satellites. That next generation of Starlink satellites is due to be launched on SpaceX's Starship vehicle. I'm not sure that we know enough about the plans to really answer your question there, Damien, but the V3 version of the Starlink satellite will be a lot larger and more capable than the current V2 minis. Also, thank you to Chuck Close for a $25 super chat. We really appreciate your support. Well, as we come up on the T-minus 47-minute mark, let's take a look at the countdown timeline for today's Starlink mission. Around T-minus 38 minutes, the launch director will report the results of their go, no-go poll. That isn't a definitive time, but they should have a decision by then. If a go is given, propellant load will start at T-minus 35 minutes. That process begins with loading kerosene onto the first and second stages of the Falcon 9, along with liquid oxygen for the first stage. With 30 minutes on the clock, cryogenic helium load will get underway. The helium is loaded into carbon fiber pressure vessels that are located inside the rocket's liquid oxygen tanks. That helium plays an important role pressurizing the tanks as the propellants are consumed. It keeps pushing the oxygen and kerosene down so it flows into the Merlin engines. Helium load starts with the first stage and continues with the second stage 4 minutes later. Loading of kerosene aboard the second stage should wrap up at about the T-minus 23-minute mark. The loading of kerosene into the much larger first stage tank continues. The next major event is the start of the strong-back chill-down process. The strong-back is the large white structure that sits alongside the rocket at the launch pad. In addition to supporting the vehicle, it serves as the conduit for propellant lines, air conditioning, and power for both the rocket's second stage and the payload fairing. We see this chill-down process in the form of what we call the big vent. It's a large cloud of vapor that will be seen as the liquid oxygen lines are cooled before the next major milestone in the countdown. That comes at the T-minus 16-minute mark, when it's the turn of liquid oxygen to start flowing through those strong-back lines into the second stage. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin first stage engines will get underway. This involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. It protects those engines from thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strongback begin retracting from the Falcon 9 rocket. Prior to that, the tanks aboard the Falcon 9 will be pressurized to give the vehicle a little more strength, as it will be losing the support of that strong back structure, which is clamped to the top of the second stage. That strong back will recline to an angle of about 1.5 degrees. It will stay there until liftoff, when it will pull away in a more rapid fashion so the Falcon 9 can lift off the pad. About 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Then around 2 minutes before launch, liquid oxygen loading should be complete on the second stage. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants. In the final 60 seconds, the control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure, and then the SpaceX launch director will give their final go for liftoff. The engine ignition command comes at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 of those Merlin 1D engines ignite perfectly and are healthy, the flight computer will command hold down clamps on the launch pad to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff at T0. Once again, that's scheduled for 10:09 p.m. Eastern. T-minus 42 minutes and counting. A big thank you to Joyce Cheffrin for a $2 super chat, and also $2 coming from Derek Brown. Thank you very much for your support. Everything we receive goes into producing these broadcasts, buying new camera equipment, and enhancing the views and the sounds that we're able to bring you of these launches. So we really appreciate that support. If you're just joining us, you're looking live at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where SpaceX is counting down to the launch of a Falcon 9 rocket carrying 23 Starlink satellites. Let's take a look at the trajectory for tonight's mission. The Falcon 9 will lift off from the pad at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It will fly in a southeasterly trajectory, targeting an orbit inclined 43 degrees to the equator. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The one on deck tonight is called Just Read the Instructions. It was the second drone ship to bear the name and entered service with its first landing in January 2016. That drone ship is stationed about 415 miles downrange in the Atlantic, east of the Bahamas. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison a bit further downrange of the booster landing zone. SpaceX will use one of its recovery ships to scoop up those payload fairings. Is a view of one half of the payload fairing just prior to touching the ocean surface. It's suspended under parasails or parachutes. The process of landing these fairings in the ocean was perfected over a number of years. Originally, SpaceX tried to catch the fairings before they made contact with the salt water, but that didn't work out, and they also realized they could refurbish the fairings, that the salt water didn't do enough damage to be of any concern. And these payload fairings cost about $6 million a pair, so it's a very worthwhile exercise for SpaceX to go fish these out of the ocean. And here's one of those recovery vessels lifting a payload fairing half onto the deck. If everything is going according to plan, we're about a minute away from the start of propellant load on the Falcon 9. We'll be standing by to see if we see signs of that operation getting underway. T-minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, propellant load should be getting underway. Ground computers are now managing the automated sequence to pump those propellants aboard the Falcon 9. 3 of the 4 propellant tanks on the rocket are being loaded at this point. If indeed the countdown is proceeding, we do not have countdown audio from SpaceX. They haven't provided that to us for some time. But if that process is underway, the kerosene will be flowing aboard the first and second stages, and liquid oxygen will be pumped into the large tank on the first stage. Taking a close-up view of the base of the Falcon 9, there's quite a bit of heat waves that are distorting our view, but what we're looking for is a band of frost to start forming just below the SpaceX logo, which you can just still make out on this booster, which has made 19 previous flights and is a little sooty. So that does make it a little difficult to see, but perhaps you can just make out that logo, and what we're looking for is a band of vapor just below that. I think perhaps we can see that forming now, an indication that propellant load is underway, and it's starting to look a little wider now as the propellants flow aboard. So I believe we can indeed confirm that propellant load is underway on the Falcon 9. What you're seeing there are the vapors created by the humidity in the atmosphere coming into contact with the cold metal of the fuel tanks and oxidizer tanks on the Falcon 9. The oxidizer used by the Falcon 9 is a super-chilled liquid oxygen. By densifying the oxygen, SpaceX can pack in more propellants and gain more performance than is possible with standard liquid oxygen used by other rockets. The fuel that is burned by the Falcon 9 is a highly refined rocket-grade kerosene known as Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1 for short. So with the start of propellant load on the Falcon 9, today's launch is locked into a T0 of 10:09 and 40 seconds. At this point, if anything should happen to stop the countdown, SpaceX would not be able to recycle and make another launch attempt tonight, and the launch would push to tomorrow. But as far as we know, everything on track for that 10:09 p.m. Eastern Time liftoff. Now less than 30 minutes to the launch of the Falcon 9. Helium loading is underway into pressure vessels on the first stage. As I explained earlier, that helium pressurizes the propellant tanks during flight. This will be the 20th flight for this particular booster, which has the tail number B1077. It made its debut back in October 2022 on a human spaceflight mission carrying 3 astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut to the International Space Station on the Crew 5 mission. That was the first time a Russian cosmonaut had flown aboard a SpaceX Dragon. The next launch for this booster came on January 18th, 2023, when it launched the GPS-3 Space Vehicle 6 satellite. Those satellites manufactured by Lockheed Martin and performing a valuable role providing navigation services around the world. Launch number 3 was a month later when it carried the Inmarsat 6F2 communication satellite. That satellite suffered a problem during its orbit raising phase. It then launched 56 satellites on the Starlink 5-10 mission. Those were the earlier version 1.5 satellites, much smaller than the V2 minis. Its 5th launch returned it to space station duties, this time without a crew carrying cargo on the CRS-28 mission. It then launched the Galaxy 37 satellite for Intelsat. Its 7th, 8th, and 9th launches were Starlink missions. It was back on the cargo run to the International Space Station, this time with a Northrop Grumman Cygnus spacecraft on the NG-20 mission. Then we have a run of Starlink missions, 5 missions, carrying satellites for SpaceX's internet service. That was followed by the Optus X mission in November of 2024. Then it was back to Starlink duty. Its most recent launch on the 18th of March on the Starlink 12-25 mission, which also lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral. And a big welcome back to Artemis in the chat with a $100 super chat with saying, guess who's back? Well, Artemis is back, and he's generously gifted 2 batches of 50 Spaceflight Now memberships. So if you were lucky enough to receive one of those memberships from Artemis, please thank him for his generosity. It's nice to have you back in the chat, Artemis. T-minus 22 minutes and counting. At this point, cryogenic helium is being loaded into both stages of the Falcon 9. In addition, the loading of kerosene aboard the second stage should have concluded a short while ago. Coming up next will be the chill down of the strongback structure. We'll see the so-called big vent, an indication that that process is underway, but it actually gets started with about, well, actually in about 20 seconds from now. And we're seeing the start of that venting from the strongback. It's the wind is carrying those vapors towards us and a little to the north. You can see from Chuck Briggs's view that it's passing through the launch pad tower. Once again, this venting is in preparation for the start of the loading of liquid oxygen on the second stage. it chills down those propellant lines so that the liquid oxygen, as it flows into the tank, arrives at the correct temperature and doesn't create any thermal shock in those lines. You can see it's a fairly still night here at Cape Canaveral. The flag at the press site is just fluttering lightly in the breeze, and those vapors just cascading down towards the pad surface. T-minus 17 minutes and counting. This vent will be wrapping up very shortly. And soon after, the flow of propellants into the second stage will begin at the T-minus 16-minute mark. And there we can see in Chuck's view that vapor gradually tapering off as that process of cooling those propellant lines is completed. T-minus 16 minutes and counting. The loading of that liquid oxygen aboard the second stage should be getting underway. So at this point, propellants are flowing into 3 of the propellant tanks aboard the Falcon 9. The 4th tank, the kerosene tank on the second stage, is already full with its load of RP1. And liquid oxygen will continue to flow onto the first and second stages up until the final minutes of the countdown. The process of loading kerosene on the first stage should wrap up about 6 minutes before liftoff. And just dipping back into the chat, another $10 super chat from Artemis with his now traditional Leroy Jenkins. Unfortunately, it's Will's night off. I'm sure he could do a much better job of rendering that for you. But thank you again for all your support. We've also got a 10 Spaceflight Now membership gift from our wonderful moderator, Callistia Lee. Welcome back, Callistia. Good to have you in the chat, and thank you for all you do. And if you've received one of those memberships from Callistia, please be sure to thank her. Also, thanks to Vincent Florio for a $10 super chat, who says, love what you all do, inspired by the channel, the team, and of course, Artemis. And they go on to also gift 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. And then Gunnar S. also adding another 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much for that support. And $5 from Four Finger J. Thanks to all your staff, admins, and mods. It's definitely a team effort to put these broadcasts together, and we appreciate everyone's support. T-minus 12 minutes and counting. And Cryptic Apathy has a $10 super chat asking how much do these rockets weigh at takeoff. Well, the Falcon 9 has 1 million pounds of propellants on board, and another 200,000 pounds approximately in the payload and the weight of the vehicle itself. So about 1.2 million pounds. T-minus 10 minutes and counting. You can see the vapors starting to stream off the second stage of the Falcon 9. The first stage is separated from the second stage by the interstage. That's the black band that you can see there. The brilliant white second stage, which is being used for the first time, as always, on a Falcon 9. The second stage is the only part of the vehicle that is not reused. So always appears brilliant white with a new paint job compared to the first stage, which picks up quite a lot of soot on each mission and gradually darkens in color. This will be the 48th flight of a Falcon 9 rocket in 2025. SpaceX building up its flight rate over the years. You can see the chart showing the number of launches in each year since the Falcon 9 came into service in 2010. Quite an amazing achievement over the last 4 years to really ramp up the launch cadence. T-minus 7 minutes and counting. At this point in the countdown, the engine chill sequence should be underway. A small amount of liquid oxygen is flowing through the Merlin engine turbopumps to cool them down ahead of engine start. Now less than 6 minutes to the launch of the Falcon 9. At this point in the countdown, the kerosene tanks on the first stage should be fully loaded. We should still soon start hearing the sounds of the SpaceX launch controllers. One of the first calls we're expecting to hear is the start of the pressurization for strong back retract. That pressurization strengthens the rocket, provides a little more rigidity as the clamp arms open up and the rocket is no longer supported by that strong back structure.
Tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
And then we hear that call. The retraction of the strongback structure, that lattice structure that sits alongside the rocket, will begin with the opening.
Lower has started.
We just heard the call that operation is underway. The strongback clamps, which have been wrapped around the top of the second stage, will start opening momentarily. You can see in this view from SpaceX's cameras at the launch pad on one of the Lightning towers looking at the vehicle, as clamp arms have indeed opened up. You can just see one to the left of the rocket, just below the payload fairing. Just like to note that our countdown clock in the top right-hand corner is counting down in real time. The SpaceX clock at the bottom of the screen in the box on the left-hand side is a little behind our clock because of the delay in receiving their video. The rocket's autonomous destruct system will be armed shortly, and liquid oxygen topping is being terminated soon.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
There we have confirmation that loading of liquid oxygen aboard the first stage is complete. Should wrap up soon on the second stage.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And there we have that call, and with that, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants.
Gas launch closeouts.
You're hearing the call for gas, the gas closeouts at the launch pad. That purges the propellant lines. Now 1 minute to launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
The Falcon 9's flight computers will take control of the countdown. And stage 1 and 2 will pressurize for flight, standing by for the launch director's final go.
Launch director, go for launch.
And there we have it, the final go from the launch director. 20 seconds. 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 on the Starlink 12-23 mission. And the Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Stand by for the roar of the Merlin engines. now 1 minute into flight. Falcon 9 is reaching the point of maximum dynamic pressure. Those Merlin engines will be throttling down. We just heard the call that the Falcon 9 has passed the speed of sound. It's now supersonic. Stunning views here of the plume captured by Adam Bernstein and his tracking camera.
MVAC in-flight chill.
Second stage is being conditioned for ignition. We're now 2 minutes into flight, approaching main engine cutoff, or MECO. This will be followed by stage separation and ignition of the upper stage. There we have MECO. And ignition on the second stage Merlin vacuum engine.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
We're about to see those events on the delayed SpaceX feed. You can see the lights of Florida behind the second stage. There's the ignition of the MVAC engine in the SpaceX feed, a little bit behind real time. You can see the engine burning in the main screen coming.
And MVAC propulsion is nominal.
That view coming to us from Peak Coston. Separation of the payload fairing halves clearly visible there. We'll shortly see that in the SpaceX feed.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there they go in the SpaceX feed. Those payload fairing halves will be retrieved from the Atlantic by SpaceX's recovery vessel. 3 minutes, 45 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 is now beyond the Kármán line at an altitude of 107 kilometers. The second stage is at 117 kilometers. That Falcon 9 first stage will continue to climb till it reaches the high point of its trajectory. Its speed gradually decreasing, now traveling at 7,035 kilometers per hour. We'll soon start to see that speed increase as the Falcon 9 begins to fall back into the atmosphere. Looks like it might have reached, just about reached its apogee at 114 kilometers. Meanwhile, the second stage continues its flight, traveling at 10,500 kilometers an hour at an altitude of 140 kilometers. You see the glow of that Merlin vacuum engine in the bottom right hand of your screen here. The view above on the right hand side is from the first stage, but at this time of night difficult to see anything, although we'll be coming up on the ignition for the entry burn of the Falcon 9, and that will be clearly visible. That view you're seeing now on the top right is from inside the interstage attached to the top of the first stage, looking upwards. Now 5 minutes, 45 seconds into flight. Just seconds away from the start of the entry burn. We'll see if our ground trackers can pick that up. And there we have it. Pete has that entry burn underway.
Stage 1 FPS.
We'll shortly see that in the SpaceX feed.
Entry burn startup.
The Falcon 9 is firing its engines to slow its descent so it does not burn up in the atmosphere as it returns to Earth. You can now see that underway in the delayed SpaceX feed. It's essentially slamming on the brakes, and you can see that on the speedometer at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side. That speed dramatically falling as those engines fire in the direction of travel. That Falcon 9 first stage now at an altitude of 35 kilometers. Meanwhile, the second stage continues. It's traveling at almost 17,000 kilometers per hour. The first stage is targeting a landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, in the Atlantic Ocean, located to the east of the Bahamas.
Stage 1 transonic.
First stage now traveling under the speed of sound. We'll see if we can see the lights of the drone ship in the view on the left-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There we have ignition of the landing burn to make the final descent onto the drone ship.
Terminal guidance.
Second stage is in terminal guidance. There we see the lights of the drone ship and a view from the deck.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
There we have it, booster 1077 on the deck of the drone ship, completing its 20th mission. Second stage continuing its burn. Should be coming up on second engine cutoff, or SECO 1. See if SpaceX stays with it.
And vac shutdown.
And there we have the call for shutdown. You see that engine flexing a little as the thrust drops off. And SpaceX has ended its broadcast there, as has become customary. The second stage is now going to coast in orbit. It's in a parking orbit. And 54 minutes into flight, that engine will reignite for a very short 2-second burn to circularize the orbit of the Falcon 9. That will be followed an hour and 5 minutes after liftoff by the deployment of the 23 Starlink satellites, which are flat-packed atop the Falcon 9 second stage. 13 of those satellites providing direct-to-cell phone communications. Well, with this mission underway but not yet complete, let's have a look at the stats for tonight's mission. This was the 20th flight for Falcon 9 booster 1077. It was the 465th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 48th Falcon 9 launch of 2025, and the 406th Falcon booster reflight. It's the 140th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days. We find this to be a useful metric to keep track of the flight rate of the Falcon 9. It's the 247th SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40 and the 302nd launch from this pad at Cape Canaveral overall. And with this successful launch now, those 48 missions on the bar chart here, and you can see last year SpaceX chalked up 134 launches. So currently they're running a little ahead of that based on our 365-day statistic, which has hovered around the 140 mark for some time now. So they'll have to pick up the pace if they want to really best that number from last year. They have set fairly lofty goals of about 170 to 180 odd launches in this year. So taking a look at the recovery stats, this was the 117th landing on Just Read the Instructions. It was the 349th overall drone ship landing for a Falcon 9 booster. And the 438th landing of a SpaceX booster on a drone ship or back at the launch site. So our stats for the space industry for this year. This was the 34th orbital launch from Florida, the 52nd orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 57th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, and the 86th orbital launch attempt globally. There's also been one confirmed orbital launch failure. So just dipping back into the chat, thank you to Jen for a $10 super chat saying fabulous launch. It's been quite a night for membership gifts. I think we probably had over 150 memberships gifted tonight. So if you did receive one of those, be sure to thank the person who donated those. As I mentioned earlier, tomorrow is going to be another very busy day in the space industry. You can see the strong back there at pad 40 coming back upright. That will help SpaceX get ready for its next launch. While we've been on the air, they're also preparing pad 39A for a launch planned for tomorrow night. Another batch of Starlink satellites due to fly. The launch window at pad 39A opens at 9:51 p.m. Eastern Time. Earlier today, I remarked that the Strongback was still at the launch pad. However, it has now moved off the pad and is headed into the hangar where a Falcon 9 will be loaded onto it, and it will be moved back out to the pad for launch tomorrow night. That's just one of 4 launches planned tomorrow from the east and west coasts. The day starts with the launch of a Firefly Alpha rocket at 6:37 a.m. Pacific time from Vandenberg. Then SpaceX will launch its delayed Starlink 11-9 mission from Vandenberg. That launch coming at 1:39 p.m. Pacific time, 4:39 Eastern. And then at 7 p.m., the 2-hour launch window opens for the Project Kuiper launch. That's the first launch of operational satellites for Amazon's internet service on an Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, just a short distance from Pad 40, where we saw tonight's launch. Actually, it neighbors. It's on one side is Pad 39A, and on the other side, Space Launch Complex 40. So a lot of activity from those 3 pads here at the Cape. And as I mentioned earlier, that launch from 39A coming at 9:51 p.m. tomorrow night. So a big thank you to everyone who's made this broadcast possible, to Adam Bernstein, who set up the cameras here at the press site and tracked the launch for us, to Chuck and Jen Briggs for providing tracking support from Merritt Island, and Pete Carstens of Max Q Productions for his excellent work tracking the rocket south of the launch pad. Also, a big thank you to all of our moderators who, to channel Will, have kept everything kosher in the chat. So with that, I'm going to wind up tonight's coverage as we prepare for an incredibly busy Monday. The week is kicking off to quite a start, and I hope you will be back to join us for our coverage of the launches on tap tomorrow. Before I go, another thank you to Four Finger J for a $2 super chat. So stay tuned for the deployment of the Starlink satellites. We'll have word of that on the website and our social media. So thank you, everyone, for joining us and your support of our coverage. We'll see you for the next one tomorrow afternoon. Until then, I'm Stephen Young for Spaceflight Now. A very good night to you all.